social distancing when working with your colleagues. This is the topic that the lovely Eva Tarabici and I are going to guide you through today as part of our series on how to build an inclusive, fun, and high-performing workplace. I'm Naili Makangu. I'm the Mary Poppins of business. I'm also known as the founder of Athena Leaders, a management and leadership consultancy that strips away your challenges, leaving behind the legacy of happy, high-performing teams.
Thank you, Naili, for this wonderful introduction. I'm Eva Tarabici, and I am an intercultural consultant, trainer, and ICF certified coach, helping my clients to achieve worldwide success and to work together, bridging cultural gaps.
For the first time in the lives of most people, we are experiencing a dramatic change in the way that we work. Nobody would have thought that we will be hit by a pandemic in 2020. And this idea that we are now working from home is really alien to a lot of people. Of course, we've always had situations where you have different teams that are co-located, or maybe one or two people are working from home. But most of the times we work from the same office, unless, of course, you do have the companies that are remote first. And by that, I mean that the structure and the foundation of the company is based on everybody working from different places around the world or working remotely. So for those companies, in fact, the current situation is not a change for them because they are used to that and they are used to operating in this way. But then for the rest of the companies, right, for people who've had to change the business structure, to have to get everybody working from home and you are not seeing your colleagues a lot, then Eva, what can we really do to reduce social distancing? And in fact, I think we might be confusing people here. Are we speaking about COVID-19 social distancing measures?
That's a good point you're raising, because this may have contributed to the confusion, right? So it's half-half. Obviously, the situation has become more relevant to more people now due to the remote working situation that you just described and due to the pandemic. But actually, today, when we are speaking about social distance and reducing social distance, we are building on a model that was created way before the pandemic, and it has nothing to do with wearing masks or keeping distances. It's the idea is based on a model by a professor from the Harvard Business School. Her name is Sadal Neely, and she quite a long time ago invented a model that helps teams that are only working together remotely and virtually to function better. And this whole model is based around the idea of the need to create empathy and understanding between team members so that the team can function. And how do we create this empathy and understanding? That's by reducing social distance. Yes. And what she means by social distance is, if I take a real life example that everybody knows, I'm sure, is, for example, when you start a new job in a new office, and you know this awkward feeling when you don't really know who to address and how to address them, and you know you have a task and you need some help but you don't know who to go to, and then there's this meeting, everybody seems to know each other, so they have already reduced their social distance, but you don't know anybody and how they take. So that's that distance that we are talking about now, not the
right now as well. It's actually funny because it's really difficult when you're new and you just go online and all you see are little squares on your Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever device you use, and that's the people, and you don't have the warmth that you would have felt, and people coming, oh, let's go out for lunch or something like that, right?
Exactly. That's a really good point. So that's what this professor also pointed out, is that in normal office settings where you work together face to face in a building, you have a lot of occasions to reduce social distance, like going for lunch together, like you said, or a chat in the coffee kitchen, or those 5 minutes before and after meetings. So all of these little occasions where you might speak about your weekend or your partner, your kids, your sports, that really reduces this social distance, and it creates understanding for each other. And now, like you said, you don't create that easily in a Zoom call. And especially if, in these panic struck times where everybody is just about, oh, no, okay, we need to get things done despite everybody being at home. We need to carry on and be efficient. It can easily go into a mode where Zoom calls are very factual, very task oriented, and people end up feeling like little wheels in a machine, rather than people that are connected to their colleagues. And that's a big problem, and especially as this crisis carries on. That is a mode that can work well for a few weeks, but people start to wear out and to disconnect from each other, to become unmotivated. It becomes much harder to really reap the talent and keep the talent on your team if people are not feeling connected to each other. So it's really important to create that empathy with each other. And one way that I sometimes propose to
Actually,
clients.
before we go into the example on how, one point I wanted to jump in there very quickly. I love what you said about creating empathy within the team. But one thing that I really want to stress, because some people sometimes always think about that the responsibility of the culture lies with HR directors and with the C-suite and stuff, which is very true. But there's also a part of it that lies with every single individual within the company. So when we look at the empathy, like Eva just described, one thing that you should really take from this session is, regardless of where you are within the organization, it's also your own responsibility to increase empathy within your own teams, because the more you can relate to others, the better it's going to be for the team, and remove, like Eva was talking about, the motivation level. You will feel motivated yourself, and then you will improve the trust within the team. So I just really wanted to put it out there, so that
Thank you.
And just from the perspective of, oh, I'm the leader of the organization, so that's my job. Or if I'm not, well, I just don't need to care about that. So improving the meetings, as Eva was talking about, is really the responsibility of every single member of the team, increasing the empathy and the connection with each other as well.
Yes. Thank you for raising this point. It's really one of the most important points in this whole discussion, because this is not something that can be created top down. In my experience, when I worked with virtual global teams, so I've done this kind of work before the pandemic, because I work with global clients. It is an approach that needs to be enabled by a team leader, for example, but then everybody needs to be really in it and participate and be active about it, and also really understand the need for it. Like you said, because it's very easy to imagine if a team leader stood there on the Zoom call and said, hey, we need to be empathetic with each other. Well, that wouldn't create anything, right?
That would be that would worry people even more, to be honest. So sorry, I cut you off earlier, but I just really want to make that point. So what was the model? Because I think you want to take us to the model as well, and I'm really
So actually, I will jump onto what you just said with a concrete example first. So one thing I tell clients often, because I saw that it really helps a lot once it's an established mechanism, is to include small talk into virtual meetings. And what usually happens when I propose that idea is that my clients go, oh, no, that is way too weird. And they imagine it to be super artificial or superficial and weird. And so it's true, it needs planning, and it needs to become kind of like a process that gets included in virtual meetings. You need to actually include it in the agenda and say, hey, we're going to spend 5 minutes talking about what's your favorite holiday. But And
Yeah,
that may
that's true
seem
because
very
those things,
artificial in the beginning.
yeah, but those things happen more naturally when you are in an office because you
Yeah,
bump into each other in the
yeah,
corridors or just when you're waiting for everybody to come in the meeting rooms. But
yeah,
now we don't have that, and I think
yeah.
this is the
And
beauty of
it can't just fall under the table.
yeah,
It can't
yeah,
just be like, okay, so now we're only in virtual meetings, so let's be
yeah,
machines now.
yeah,
No, you still need understanding for each other, and you still need to sometimes just laugh with each other.
yeah,
You know, and that happens in these situations. And even if you feel like the first 3 times it's a bit ridiculous and it's a bit like,
yeah,
okay, yeah, so my favorite holiday is Christmas, um, it still, it breaks the ice a bit, and it still
yeah,
shows everybody, okay, so in the end, when we click the leave the meeting button on that Zoom call, we are still humans. We still go back to our normal life after work, and that is just that bit of humanness that is needed in these times, especially in these times. Um, and so this split model is all about that. There are many, many different levels that you can work on. So one level is really looking at what is our structure and our power situation right now. Are there maybe, so in global virtual teams, this would be a big headquarters in the UK, and then 2, 3 little offices spread around the world who
yeah,
don't have the same access to the decision making.
yeah,
They might feel like they are a bit underprivileged because they don't have that access. Whereas the people in the headquarters might feel like, okay, so this is where the big decisions and the actual work get done.
mhm,
So there can be different perceptions, and you can work around that if you are aware of it. There are plenty of exercises you can do to, you know, not have this power unbalance so blatantly open for everybody to see and feel.
and
um,
in fact, Eva, one this power dynamic that people see in organization, as you just described, this has nothing to do with the COVID-19, right? This is something that even existed before
it
the
existed
pandemic.
before, but now, for example, what I've experienced is that in some firms, part of the staff can come back,
Yeah,
but in order to keep the office empty enough, the other part of the staff needs to sit at home. And so that can very easily create the same kind of structure even within one country.
yeah,
Even if, say,
exactly.
people are in Cambridge, but you know, half of the people are in the office, and they can, you know, I mean, they keep 2 meters of distance, but they can talk to each other face to face, but the other people never come in. That creates the same kind of power imbalances, or
Yeah,
perceived power imbalances often. And you need to be aware of that, and
yes,
speak about that.
yeah,
um, Another thing is, for example, when you look at the processes that are in place, for example, in global virtual teams, is how do we deal with time zones?
yeah.
Is there one person that
Oh, yeah.
always has to take a call at 9 p.m. in the
Mhm.
evening, because everybody else is situated in a
Oh,
different time zone, and this is more convenient for the majority?
yeah.
So in the current crisis, I sometimes say, well, think of your parents as people living in a different
Mm,
time zone. I mean, parents in your
mm,
staff, people who have kids,
mm.
because they may have times where it's really challenging for them to
Yeah,
get anything done, because that is the time that the toddler always screams and is hungry. So
yeah.
ask them, so what's your time zone where I really, you know,
Mm,
shouldn't be expecting you to be full on concentrated on a call? So
mm,
these are things where I've realized in the pandemic, you can really take a lot of models that were actually worked
mm.
out for global and virtual teams, and you need to apply them consciously to your remote working situation, even if you're just within
Yeah.
the
I
city.
agree. And I think one thing I've seen before in a lot of work I've done, especially running remote teams and even offices that are co-located and non-collocated but around the world, because I was managing people in the US and in India and in Cambridge, in the UK. So you're trying to figure out the time zones. And what you said is 100% right, because it's really important to know. Because obviously, if we do the meetings as based specifically and kind of promoting that one time zone, then the other person working on coming on the call will always be maybe a bit tired or it's the wrong time for them. But another thing that to also think about, one of the things I see a lot is that managers don't really open the discussions on
Yeah.
how do we structure the way we work so that we can bring everybody together and look after time zones and everything like that. But one of the things that I think that what they do, they take it on themselves to be the person that wakes up super early to hit the US timeline, and then work to the timeline, and then work really late to hit the US timeline. And I think it's best to really think about how do you get the entire team, even if you have ideas like rotations for, you know, for this meeting, it's gonna be this time to have this person and stuff like that. But again, discuss that as part of the team. And with the pandemic as well, although we're talking about time zones, and as Eva, you're talking about parents there as well, then is again the same idea of talking and discussing what is a good time, because you have to
opening up the discussion
from the nursery, or the kids that are home because they are sick as well. So again, although it's not specifically time zone if you're in the same office, but the same principle applied, as Eva said. Don't disregard models that have worked for other people. So it's kind of how do you adapt them to the organization as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So we don't always need to reinvent the wheel. We need to see, okay, how have other people managed that were in similar, even if not the same situations, and then, you know, just steal their good ideas. Having seen now how important it is to, you know, care for this establishment of trust and understanding and empathy, Nali, what do you usually do with your clients to build trust in teams? I think you work on that as well, right?
Yes, definitely. And you know, as we've talked about, and as in the first part of this particular topic. So next time I need
but see, for me, I will try to keep my emails a bit shorter.
Yeah, but and yes, I mean, this was a bit of fun. Obviously, there's a lot we haven't touched on, but you can see how already we haven't even gone into the vulnerabilities, but we already have something very interesting and important to understand how Eva and I can work even better to continue our collaboration. And that is the same thing that you can do. It didn't take us much time, right? So you can.
No, but it was fun. It was spontaneous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for people, it would be.
Exactly. Oh, that's such a good metaphor.
Yeah. So use that analogy to think about deconstructing team building exercises, so that you can paper your meetings and paper the session and the way you work with each other with some of that, right? So I'll just leave you with that. And if you are interested in deconstructing meetings and sharing your blueprints, and please